Same.
And that takes us to our final album of the evening, Fishbone, which should be an interesting one because I know that Fishbone is often used in shorthand by Matt for different things. So we'll see if maybe they were able to win him over. But I get first take. But Matt, first run the numbers.
Matt, are you there?
Goodbye.
Are you
Like
back, Matt?
listening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Welcome.
Okay, so Truth and Soul by Fishbone comes in at number 1,448 in the 1980s on Best Ever Albums, number 153 in 1988, number 9,837 of all time. It is Fishbone's highest rated album on Best Ever Albums. Again, not making Rolling Stone's list. Rolling Stone, no love for CTS tonight for our albums. And Fishbone is ranked at number 3,199 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums.
Got it. Well, the word of the night has been eclectic in some ways for the albums that we've covered.
Sure has.
And this is no different in this one. This is a funk album. This is a hard rock album. This is a ska album at times. This is a punk rock album at times. Yep. It is a metal album at times, and sometimes it's all of those things within the course of the same song. Like now, some you can clearly say this is of that genre, right? Like Ma and Pa is primarily a ska song, right? And there's different songs. There's a political edge to songs, as you would expect from an album with a song called Subliminal Fascism in it. The song Ghetto Soundwave seems to be kind of a throwback to that 70s sort of Afrocentric, right? Like funk music, that I think was a huge influence on the band. I know that they came sort of out of the embers. If I remember a little bit of the Fishbone story, like they were sort of brought together as kind of like a party band kind of. And they sort of all met each other in high school and all had different interests in music. And it was like, what if you took like a bunch of people together and threw them there? And then they sort of kind of like Bad Brains, right? They were like, we do all these styles, but that DIY punk energy is kind of what we're looking for, right? So you take that and it's always hard for me to not connect them to the Chili Peppers, right? Who they were both friends with and contemporaries of, right? So what they're doing here is a lot of what the Chili Peppers were also doing in the 80s, albeit with maybe a little bit stronger lean into the funk, right? And the hard rock, as opposed to sort of the ska and punk maybe more, which is a little bit there. So to me, Fishbone is kind of hard to pin down in terms of what they are because they're a little bit of everything. But I think as time goes on, they've sort of been remembered as I think more of a ska band than maybe they were in terms of all of their tracks. Like I always thought of them as like a funk band with like ska elements, right? But like the guitars was the other thing. I always thought of with Fishbone. They're like really good guitar parts, and that they had that interesting mix of like having a political bend but also like party music. And in that case it's sort of like the funk of the 70s, like a Sly Stone, right? Like kind of walk that line, but also a little bit of like what reggae was, at times it could be like get together music, good vibes, uplifting, but also could be talking about strife and difficult situations. Now, the difference, of course, is obvious in that the reggae, plays to like a more chilled out effect, whereas no one would really ever call Fishbone chilled out at all, right? They kind of are like frantic energy. I mean, for God's sakes, they had a song called Party at Ground Zero, right? Like, is kind of the song that broke them out. But yeah, I think for those that might have some semblance of Fishbone, Party at Ground Zero is not on this one, but that might be the song but like Bonin' in the Boneyard and Ma and Pa and Freddy's Dead are probably like songs 2 through 4 or 1 through 4, in that group of songs that people might know. And they're all great songs. The standout for me is just how tight the group is while also having like a wild freewheeling energy, which I know sounds oxymoronic, but that's kind of what's cool about them. Like at times it feels like it's all broken down and been, like just like a party's breaking out around you, or like a burst of energy, and then they kind of go into sort of like really cohesive, structured music at times with really well put together bass lines and guitar parts and traditional singing that at times almost sounds like soul music, and you're bouncing between it, and they kind of keep you on your toes, and I love that about this album. And so I really enjoy this album. Once again, I don't want to keep saying this because you can just assume it, but like I want to open it up to you guys and then kind of bounce off of it down the road. So I think Josh has the second take.
Yep. Yeah, so I knew Fishbone, A, from Party at Ground Zero, and B, I've seen them live before. And my Fishbone story is at that concert. It was at a small venue in Wilmington during my college years, and I saw a guy get a bottle broken over his head, which was like the craziest thing I had ever seen. And like there's blood everywhere, and the guy got carried out. And so I don't know what it is about Fishbone's music, or maybe just the alcohol that night, but that was a crazy early experience for me. And so yeah, the thing about Fishbone is, you're right, is they're such like a melting pot of sounds, and they're able to combine them in their songs, and it works. I think I've always de facto kind of associated them as a ska band, but they're really not, because they're definitely like more funk and I would say like soul and probably punk adjacent too. But I would say primarily funk. I think that's kind of the core. They've got some really great bass lines in here. The horns are always kind of another standout for them, and they appear throughout as well. But they have this ability to kind of, similar to what you said, John, it seems like they kind of go wild at times and spiral out, and then they're able to really come back together and play tightly. They're like a rubber band. They get really stretched out, and then they snap back into place on their songs. That's a great analogy,
Josh. That's perfect. Yeah.
And it's remarkable how well they do that too, because that applies to the genres that they put in their songs as well. They'll have a funk core, but then they'll like add these punk elements or some like crazy horn section, and or like really fast like electric guitar in it, and it all works for them. The first song on this album, Freddie's Dead, I was listening to it before I looked at it. It was like, man, this sounds like Curtis Mayfield. And then like I was like, oh yeah, it is a Curtis Mayfield song. So so yeah, they start off with a cover, but then it seems, I think it's all originals after that. And I just really love their energy. I love their, the other thing, like you said, is kind of their political stance, and I feel like that comes through in here, and they're not afraid to comment on all sorts of issues, and all of the songs on here are really enjoyable. I can see why this is probably one of their higher rated albums. It's a really strong representation of who they are, I think, and the fun that they bring, but also kind of the edge that they bring. And they really kind of know some parts of other bands sound like them, but there's really kind of like no other band that fuses things in the way that they do. They're kind of unique in that way. And so, yeah, as a result, I really enjoyed this album. It's fun to listen to, and I think you can get a lot out of this album.
I would go so far as to say that like Ma and Pa is like, if there was ever going to be a ska song that Matt actually might like, it's probably that song. It's like, if not, then there's no songs Matt will ever like that are ska. It's basically a ska song made for people that don't like ska, is how I describe that song. So yeah.
So my Fishbone story is I saw them in college as well.
Oh,
my freshman year in college, they came.
They're everywhere.
And it was a triple bill. What's that?
They're everywhere.
They are, yes. In 1996, they were. This is probably
I have
fall of
seen
1996.
Fishbone, but not in college, just to square the circle there. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is one of the first. This is freshman year. Yeah, this is probably fall of '96, and they also there was a triple bill. It was them, Mighty Mighty Boss Stones, and De La Soul.
Oh wow, nice.
Which
Wow, what
I
a
know
bill.
for what's that?
That's a great bill.
I said, what a bill.
Yeah. And so, which was a reaction of a lot of people that I went to college with and people that I've told this story to before that like, oh my God, that's so, but for Matt and, freshman year college Matt, this was not the show that I would have chosen to go to. This is the show that was just, I went to because that's what was happening. So, I remember being like, this is the first time I ever heard of ska, too, by the way, because I never knew what ska was growing up. Wow. And so when I got there and people were like, oh, we're gonna skank. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? So I didn't know anything about the dancing or like any, I heard of De La Soul before. I knew the Mighty Mighty Boss Stones from the, Knockin' on Wood song. Was it the impression that I get?
Yeah.
I didn't really know anything by Fishbone, and I remember not liking Fishbone at all. I remember that they were crazy on stage, and they had like these antics and stuff, but musically it just did nothing for me. So going into this record, I was not expecting much, and I was pleasantly surprised with how much I did like this. I did like Ma and Pa. I pretty much liked every song on this record to one extent or another, with the exception of probably the two shortest songs, which are kind of a little bit more like maybe the more punk. I hesitate to call them hardcore, but like the faster songs that just didn't really do much for me, which were Deep Inside and Subliminal Fascism. I think that those are the ones that were like kind of duds for me, falling a little flat. But other than that, I kind of agree with a lot of the things that you guys have said already. This is just another album that's just throwing all kinds of stuff together. We're getting a lot of that tonight in different ways, I think. I think that, the Katie Lang album's very much like that. The Sinead O'Connor, certainly this one, but in like I said, in different ways. And Chili Peppers absolutely stand out. There's like I was feeling a little Sublime in here too, because even though not every song on here is ska, right? But the ones that were ska, like Ma and Pa, maybe Question of Life. What would you say the other more ska?
I mean, those are the
songs
two that are more explicitly
right.
the ones you just mentioned. Others have like occasionally like an element for a couple seconds, right?
Right,
there.
But it's not. Really so I was happy with that, right? And Ma and Pa, I laughed at the chorus. It's just a great, hey, Ma and Pa, what the hell is wrong with ya? Like it just had, for something about that just made me kind of chuckle or whatever. And it is very much a ska song. It's got the upbeat, kind of the offbeat kind of a thing happening, as well as like the horns and stuff like that. But I was fine with it. I was like, okay, I can like this. And then, I guess I like my ska in small doses, but, Bone in the Boneyard was great. That was just I was like, here, I was like, got this feeling. It's just very upbeat, very catchy, very, easy to get into. And, I was like, I found a song like Pouring Rain very interesting. Is that what is that? It's not reggae. Is it rocksteady? I don't know how you would just what that genre is, but there was something kind of standing out to me with that particular song, the way that was being done, and I was like, yeah, that seems like it's kind of in the genre, the lane of like a reggae, but it's not quite that.
It's slower.
It's kind of what they do. That there's like reggae elements, but it's not. I don't think it is anything. It's like got 5 different elements of. Like reggae, rocksteady, soul at times, like the way they're singing, right? Like
it's just so eclectic and it's so interesting, And then they close out the album with Change, which sounds like it came off of a Blind Melon album, just like it is Shannon Hoon with an acoustic guitar kind of a thing, So, I mean, I was very much interested. It's not like I had to listen to this and go, I don't know what to make of this. Even though there's a lot of stuff going on, I at no point was I confused by what was happening, which I think with an album like this could be very susceptible to something like that.
You know what I wrote down for change, by the way, Matt, that you might laugh at? It sounds like a solo Paul McCartney song.
Yeah, it's just like it's like this innocuous kind of. It's fine, right? It's good, but it definitely stands out as kind of like this. It doesn't. It's like a little bit of a an outlier with this, but it's a nice kind of guitar driven song, but it doesn't. There's not really any edge to it. It's a very it's more of a simple song, but I think. Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I was kind of like not expecting much, maybe even expecting to dislike it outright, and I can't say that at all. And I mean, having said all that, it's definitely a thumbs up for me. It's not going to crack. I don't think I like it so much where it's cracking my top of the decade, but as far as just an overall level of enjoyment, yeah, it's certainly up there. I could see myself playing this again at some point. And having a little bit more of an affinity, a little bit more of a positive association with Fishbone than I did for that night in 1996. I don't know how many of the songs here that they played that night or what. Actually, I could probably look up that set list nowadays with the internet, right? There's probably that set list could exist out there somewhere, but that
you couldn't have heard Impression That I Get at that show either, because that didn't come out till like 97, I don't think, right?
Oh, Oh, really? That could be true.
I don't think so. I could be wrong, but I thought it was a little later than 96.
I don't know. I want to look that up.
Someday, I suppose, is what you're thinking of, or something. That's the other one.
Well, that's the Impression That I Get was the song that was very much like that was a
big hit. Yeah.
97. Yeah, so that wasn't out yet. Okay. Released in February of 97.
Questioning everything now.
Yeah, when you said 96 right there, I'm like, well, they wouldn't have had that.
I mean, I started college. I started college in the fall of 96, and I remember that show being early. The first show I ever saw at my school was Dog's Eye View. So bonus points to anybody that could name the song that they were popular for. But
false.
Yeah, those guys.
I get to throw it back together and it falls.
That was like right when that song was at its zenith was when they came to my school.
Count on that.
I wasn't a big fan of that show either, but so I guess maybe if I saw them in the spring, then that song would have just come out. But anyway, so I and the bottom line there, I wasn't De La Soul. I remember thinking, oh, they're pretty good, but I didn't really know any of their songs, wasn't that into it. But so now I have a more of a positive association with Fishbone.
When's Def Leppard coming on stage? Is what?
That's kind of what. Adrenalize. I was starting to lose it there. I probably would have rather had Matthew Sweet or something like that at that time in '96. But that was more of my power pop, kind of, Beach Boys, Beatles callback, 90s alt rock guys. But yeah, I got to go thumbs up here. This was I'm glad that I have a new impression of thoughts on Fishbone. And yeah, man, these guys are all over the place. They're crazy. So I almost wish I could have that show back and try to, with my expanded, musical tastes, with me and maybe kind of enjoy that, because what I do remember is that they were nuts on stage, and there were these women that were had these crazy costumes on. It was a show. It was a legit show, so I do remember going, well, they're good performers, I just don't dig the music. So but maybe I would like it now. So thumbs up.
Josh, did you ever think you'd see an era where Matt would give an Iron Maiden album, a Fishbone album, and a female singer-songwriter all thumbs ups back to back to back? It's and it's like the Rocky IV speech at the end. If I could
power
change,
of the stacks.
You could change.
Of the combing and the stacks.
I am growing so much because of CTS.
Maybe Where'd You Go from the Mighty Mighty. That was on the Clueless soundtrack. I bet they played that too.
Yeah, or Someday I Suppose is another song that was pretty big from that.
That's still a band that I never really cared.
We're covering them in the 90s, Matt, so guess what?
I'll get a chance.
I would say the one other band that I want to reference in regards to Fishbone would be Funkadelic. I think there's definitely a through line in terms of their vibe, but also kind of the performative aspect of them as a band. And the funk kind of underpinnings to them. So if you like Funkadelic,
they don't really have the space funk, but they have sort of that zaniness that they do.
Yeah, there's a humor. Zany. There's a humor in their lyrics and some of their songs as well.
Are we covering Living Color at all?
No.
I was trying
Would
to
you
think.
like to cover them?
I'm just saying. I'm trying to think of like because they had,
Josh gets sick in a couple weeks, so Matt can.
Yeah, right. But I remember they seemed like they were kind of like genre, probably not as much as these guys. I don't remember that, but they definitely were
no, they were more straight ahead rock and roll.
Yeah,
like Rolling Stones influenced.
Oh, were they?
Would be would how I'd say they were.
Okay. Yeah, Cult of Personality. That's their main song, and that was kind of like that was more straightforward. But anyway, yeah.
Good stuff. Thumbs up from Matt. The best ska album he's ever listened to is what I heard.
That's the best ska album. That's not a ska album.
He did mention that it's ska adjacent, which I would
Yes.
agree with, because this is definitely not fully in the lane. But yeah, probably the only album that has ska on it that Matt gave a thumbs up.
I thought there was another one that I was like maybe lukewarm on. I don't know if it was
like
was it the
neutral on the
special?
Specials album, I think. Yeah.
Buzzcocks, maybe. I don't know.
Well,
Buzzcocks.
are punk.
No, they're not.
They're punk. Yeah.
I mean, it might have been the specials
Maybe
like
the
that. I was
jam.
kind of like that wasn't.
You kind of like the English beat a little bit too, if I remember.
Or maybe it was
correctly.
that. Shoot, I don't know. I didn't write down all my notes like you do, John. I can't. I just have to go in
That's why you
memory,
gotta
which
keep
sucks these days.
Meticulous
Solid ether.
notes. That's why you got to write it down. I got a whole thing that says CTS album database just sitting there for you guys
I
to
know.
archive your stuff. But we'll get you there eventually. So, well,